What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to another edition of Touchline Talk here on 110 Sports. There's a lot of actual games going on right now, but there's also not that much of crucial importance in the middle of the week here. You've got some League Cup stuff going on, but by and large, and of course, every MLS team was playing last night, but by and large, we have a little bit of a break, which means we're going to do some transfer talk here off the top of the show today, specifically with this very interesting domino effect of transfers that is happening with big names connecting four different leagues potentially by the time this is all said and done, if all of these moves become official. So we're going to start with sort of the trigger point to this, which is Alvaro Morata returning to Juventus. It's a loan deal for now. They have the option to buy depending on how things go. And, of course, this is his second stint there. 15 goals and 12 assists in 63 appearances. 27 of those were starts in his two seasons, 2014-15 and 15-16 at Juventus. I think you're going to see something similar this time around where he makes an impact, but he's not a regular starter. Of course, the situation was a little different when Ronaldo wasn't in the picture, obviously, when he was there last time. But there are only so many sort of true center forwards or just people that play in the middle of the field you can fit. Ronaldo's not a winger at this point in his career. Paulo Dybala never was a winger. Morata is a pure number 9. So it just gets real condensed real quickly if you're trying to put all of those guys in there together. So what I think you're going to see is that, for example, now when Dybala is hurt, Morata might come in and start some games right away just because they need somebody to pair with Ronaldo. You can sort of play Ronaldo underneath him. And he's going to be good. I don't think he's going to take the world by storm or anything, but he's going to get you some goals. He's going to do some good things for you. And then when Dybala gets healthy, you're probably going to see him more in a substitute role where he can come on, he can hold the ball up, he can nick you a late goal if they're tied against one of the better teams in Serie A or something. He can be a difference maker, but it's not a massive move. It's not some sort of statement of intent. He felt very comfortable there, obviously. He had success, like I said, 15 goals in Serie A. In 63 appearances, only 27 starts, so it's a pretty good return. It's not a world-class return. But he just sort of hasn't really ever gotten comfortable somewhere and stayed there for a long time. I feel like this is going to be better than his stint at Chelsea, but it's not going to dramatically alter the way he's viewed or the player that he is. He is who he is. He's a good player. He can help this team. But at the end of the day, this is more of a depth move. And particularly with Dybala's injury history, he's going to have a role to play here, and you're competing on multiple fronts. He's going to be a useful piece for Andrea Pirlo. I just don't get all that excited about this move. It doesn't do much to enthuse me. It's just another piece in this Juventus puzzle as Pirlo figures out how he wants to put all of these pieces together and what his preferred 11 are. This deal came about because Barcelona told Luis Suarez he was no longer wanted. And so when Atletico Madrid felt like they had an opportunity to get Suarez, that's when they made Alvaro Morata expendable. That deal has also more or less become official. The clubs have acknowledged it's happening. So Luis Suarez is going to join Atletico Madrid. I really like this for Atletico Madrid. I think if they can get some of these rumored deals that are floating around, specifically Lucas Torreira from Arsenal, this could look really good for them next year. In a down year for La Liga, where Barcelona is in chaos, Real Madrid are not bringing in any reinforcements, did not look particularly great in their opener, are just not what they usually are. I think there's a window here if they can get these pieces to work and gel quickly, and specifically Luis Suarez with João Felix as his playmaker. But Suarez can absolutely make a difference and rack up the goals if João Felix plays to his potential this year and becomes a superstar. You've got your defensive foundation because it's Diego Simeone. And Suarez is still scoring goals at a very high level. He's not best striker in Europe caliber like he was 5 or 10 years ago, but he's still a very useful piece for this team. It's not like he's going to be asked to carry the load by himself, but I view him as absolutely as an upgrade over Morata. I don't think that's a bold thing to say at all. And it's a great piece of business for Atleti because Barca wanted him out. You don't have to give up much financially, you just pay him, which is not insignificant when it's Luis Suarez, but Atleti have the money to do that kind of thing. So I really like this. He's obviously very comfortable in that league, having spent most of his career there at this point. You absolutely make Alvaro Morata expendable to do this. And you've got it's a loan deal for Morata, like I mentioned, at Juve. So if this is a short-term thing with Suarez, maybe you give Morata a second year at Juventus and then bring him back, or maybe you go a different direction because Suarez is still playing well. But you've got that protection where you're not going to lose Morata for nothing. You've still got the leverage there because it's a loan deal and you get the upgrade right now. So I really like this combination of moves from Atletico Madrid. Like I said, part of this depends on what else they can get over the line and what this team actually looks like by the time this transfer window closes. But I think Diego Simeone's got to be really excited about this possibility and what this team can do. Barcelona also sold Nelson Semedo to Wolves. This is more about the second half of this and the impact and the potential guy coming in. But I do want to talk about Semedo for a second just because this is a nice piece for Wolves. And of course, it's another Portuguese international. Surprise, surprise. I would love to see them just start 11 Portuguese guys at some point just to do it. I think it would be really funny. They've got to be pretty close at this point. That would obviously involve taking your best goal scorer, Raul Jimenez, off the field, but maybe in a cup or something. They obviously have the connections through Jorge Mendes. They're going to bring in Portuguese players as long as Wolves is functioning this way. So Semedo's going to come in and fill that spot vacated by Matt Doherty when he left for Spurs. It's not that I think Semedo is a difference maker in that position. He didn't look particularly great at times, especially against Bayern last year. But what this does is, A, it gets you an established, experienced, high-level player who knows what it means to play in Europe, play at a club like Barcelona, to fill this hole that is now in your team because Doherty left. And the guy occupying that position right now is Adama Traore. And I've talked about this before with the tactical flexibility that Nuno has, with the different things Traore can do, and this is part of why I didn't think losing Doherty was a big deal, is because Traore can fill that spot, and when he gets going, he can control a game like he did for most of the second half against Manchester City, and like he's done against Manchester City before. But when you can put Semedo in that spot, because you lost one of your other primary strikers in Diogo Jota, you got a nice price in return for him. But all of a sudden, you can restructure this thing so that your front two is Raul Jimenez and Adama Traore. And then you've got some weapons still off the bench and a Podence who showed some really good things against Manchester City. You can play with this. You can go 3 up front if you want. It just gives more flexibility and it allows Traore to be focused solely on attack. He's capable of playing wing back, but I like him better up the field. And Semedo is not uber aggressive like Doherty was, which should give Traore more space. That was part of the problem with playing the two of them together, is they both were so good going forward that they kind of got in each other's way a little bit. That shouldn't be as much of a problem this time around. So I like this for Wolves. It's a nice way to reshuffle their pieces to compensate for the losses that they've taken to two key players this offseason, but I still feel just as good about him as I did at the end of last season when Doherty and Jota were still there. Semedo was allowed to leave Barcelona because it sounds like Serginho Dest is going to come in and replace him. I have some thoughts on this, but I want to save most of them for when this deal actually happens because it's not done yet. I don't like speculating until these deals are over the line or super, super close. I think there's a 95% chance it gets done, but I don't want to talk too much about the Serginho Dest side of this and some of my other thoughts on that quite yet. But the one thing I will say is this is not surprising because Serginho Dest has always had a soft spot for Barcelona. You've seen some of his teammates coming up the youth national team ranks saying the stuff that you've seen with him in Barcelona and him showing support and love for Barcelona is nothing new. And B, yeah, Dest is a U.S. international, but he grew up in the Netherlands. And Ronald Koeman has those Dutch connections. He's very familiar with everything going on. Eredivisie, Dutch national team who was trying to get Serginho Dest to play for him. He's very familiar with this player. So there is no surprise because what it's sounding like, if you believe these reports, is that Dest is choosing to go to Barcelona over Bayern Munich. If you look at the specifics and the people involved, you shouldn't be surprised by that at all. But like I said, it's not actually done yet, so I have more thoughts. We're going to save them until this becomes official and he's got his pictures holding a Barcelona jersey. But that's your 4-league transfer domino of the year. Barcelona decided to let Suarez go. Atleti jumped at the chance, which then sent Alvaro Morata to Juventus. Barcelona also sold Nelson Semedo to Wolves to make room, theoretically, for the arrival of Serginho Dest. It's a lot going on there. But it's also cool because, like I said, 4 leagues, high-profile players, high-profile teams. We're going to have to obviously wait to see who comes out as the winner of this whole thing and if the Dest deal actually happens. But it makes a lot of sense for all of these teams right now. I don't think anybody's coming out as a big loser. You just don't have a lot to lose if you're Juventus. You got an upgrade at striker if you're Atletico Madrid. You got a replacement for a player that was so important to you for if you're Wolves. Barcelona's getting rid of the salary, which was the whole goal. So, wanted to just go through all of that real quickly. It's a lot to sort of a lot to keep track of, but that was most of the big deals that have happened were all related to each other, so that was kind of interesting to see. The other big deal is not connected to those in any way, shape, or form. That is that Edouard Mendy, the Rennes goalkeeper, is now at Chelsea. This is not surprising. It's been rumored for a while. The more Kepa struggled, the more this became likely. He's a different kind of goalkeeper than Kepa. He's going to be more aggressive, which is a good thing for Chelsea because that's part of what Kepa has struggled with. He's just going to... And the other part of this for Mendy, the one word you hear with him a lot is consistent, which obviously is exactly what Chelsea need. That's part of Kepa's problem, is he just has not been consistent enough. Same issue Manchester United had last year with De Gea. I've been saying it over and over, I'll say it again. You got to be able to count on your goalkeeper. When you've got this much talent, you don't have to be the best shot stopper in the world. You don't have to go win a game for your team. You just got to make sure you don't lose them and come up with some big saves from time to time. That's pretty much what Mendy does. He's been one of the better goalkeepers in France. He's got a rather incredible story. He was pretty much at the point where he was going to give up and was without a team. Hopped on as a 4th goalkeeper at Marseille. Got a chance. Moved to Rennes, and all of a sudden he's helping his team qualify for the Champions League, and Chelsea wants him as their next goalkeeper, partially because Petr Cech is a fan and likes what he's seen from him. That's a pretty good compliment to one of the best goalkeepers of all time. You know, the guys over at Chelsea know a thing or two about identifying goalkeepers. The other part of this is that Chelsea was never going to spend big money to go get a high profile name so soon after splashing the record number that they did for Kepa. Your Jan Oblaks or Dean Hendersons or something, all of these other goalkeepers they've been rumored with. They just were not interested in spending that money again. So yeah, Mendy's not the big name. He might not even be the future. But at least you can put him in right away to give Kepa a break, give yourself a chance as you have to try and get all of these new pieces to gel together. Just solidify a little bit at the goalkeeper position. Let him learn how to work with this back line that once they're healthy and ready to go doesn't know how to work with each other either. Just put them all in there together. Let them build some chemistry. And then I don't think Chelsea's given up on Kepa. I don't think you can afford to after the money they spent on him, as I said before. So you just give him a break. You let him clear his head. You work on some stuff. And you give him a chance to try and win this job back. Or if somebody wants him on loan, I think you've got to feel comfortable with Mendy being your one, at least this season. We'll see if he can actually make the adjustment and step up to the level of Chelsea and the pressure that comes with being Chelsea's number one goalkeeper. But I don't feel like this is a situation where he's coming in and immediately taking that job for good. But he's absolutely competition. Competition is never a bad thing. And not only is it just competition, but he's there to solve a problem that is hurting Chelsea right now. And that is the inconsistency at the goalkeeper position. He's more than capable from a talent perspective of taking that next step in his career. We'll have to see how he handles the mental side of it, but it's you got to do something. You can't expect to fulfill the promise of this Chelsea team and what people think they can do with the performance you're getting in goal right now. Doesn't mean Kepa can't be the guy eventually and can't be the guy moving forward long term. Maybe he just needs a year on loan to clear his head. Maybe he just needs some competition and all of a sudden this is going to make him better. I think you could very well see some back and forth at the goalkeeper position like you did with Willie Caballero at the end of last season, where Frank Lampard sat Kepa for a little while and then went back to him again. So it's not a massive deal financially. They didn't go break the bank on another goalie, but they got a good one who you pretty much know what you're going to get, which is important, especially for this team right now. So I like the move for Chelsea. I think Mendy's capable of playing at this level. Might not be the most ideal in terms of getting playing time and solidifying himself at that next level as being a Champions League starting goalkeeper. But at the end of the day, Chelsea comes calling and you've got an opportunity to start right away. You say yes, he's going to be solidified as his country's number one goalkeeper based on what he's done already. There isn't too much downside, and the upside is obviously very high if he can find a way to win this job permanently. But if nothing else, it's a stopgap for Chelsea. It's a relatively cheap one with the money they have at their disposal right now. So I like this for both sides. I think Chelsea had to make this move, and it's just going to give everybody a little more confidence knowing they've got another option at goalie now. Also want to talk about a couple MLS moves. Haven't gotten around to mentioning that Gonzalo Higuain, speaking of Juventus, is officially at Inter Miami now. He's training with the team. Still unclear exactly when he's going to make his debut. Could very well be this weekend, maybe not. Who knows? Nobody's really quite sure where he's at fitness-wise in terms of when he might be available. But a couple things I want to say here. One, just bringing in somebody of Higuain's stature is a really nice boost for this team at a time when they're gaining momentum. things didn't go so well against New York Red Bulls last night, but they finally started picking up some points, as I talked about on Tuesday. You feel like they're finally starting to fulfill their potential, at least to a certain extent. So you've got some better performances. Then you bring in this kind of player at a position of need. They've been waiting to get their number 9. It's the one gaping hole in this team. They just haven't had anybody fill that spot, which they've only had so much time to put this roster together, and then COVID happens, which hurts your ability to bring in somebody. So it was always going to be a work in progress, but they got their guy after multiple names were thrown around, including Luis Suarez. So it's immediately just a morale boost for this team to have somebody like that come into your dressing room, and he's gonna score goals because this is MLS defending we're talking about, which sometimes is pretty good and sometimes is just awful. Go look at what's happening to the San Jose Earthquakes right now. Higuain's gonna get plenty of opportunities to find the back of the net. In terms of what his impact could actually be, I would like to suggest that there is every reason to be optimistic that he's going to be very, very good. I say that because if you look at the players that have come over that are sort of in this same mold of high-profile European, playing in World Cups, Champions Leagues, all of those kind of things, playing for the big teams, who was successful in MLS? It's been the strikers. Wayne Rooney, David Villa, Zlatan. The ones that have struggled, for the most part, were the midfielders. Pirlo, Gerrard, Lampard. Schweinsteiger was pretty good for Chicago, but your bigger names, that's where you've struggled, is sort of the fitness and endurance part of it. The physical toll that's flying across the country takes on you, having to cover as much space as you do in the midfield. Those are the guys that weren't able to really leave their mark on MLS. Strikers haven't traditionally had that problem. And Higuain is also only 32. It's not like he's 35, 36, 37. He absolutely has something left in the tank. So I'm a huge fan of this for Inter Miami. You get somebody that's going to sell you some tickets, that's going to get people excited, going to add a little bit of positivity to your locker room, to the players already on the team. You've seen a pattern and have every reason to believe that this is going to work based on what you've seen similar strikers do coming from big-time European clubs. He's not at the end of his career by any means. He's obviously closer to the end than the beginning, but this could absolutely be a multi-year thing for him. I really like this. This is the kind of move that if you can get through this season, maybe you make the playoffs and find a way to pull off an upset, but you get another transfer window, another off-season to fill this roster out, they could be really good next year. You'll learn your lessons and take your lumps in year one. Come back with Higuain to pair with the other attacking talent they have. The potential is there for this team to be really good pretty quick. It's not just Higuain, but this takes them to the level where you look at that roster and you go, okay, that's a team that can really do some damage in the Eastern Conference. So I'm a huge fan of this. I think it's absolutely worth the risk. There's no guarantee this is going to work. But in terms of probability, I think you can very easily justify it and say there's a logical reason why we made this move and why we think it's going to work out really well for everybody involved. The other big news is a little bit more recently. Atlanta United has found their replacement for Pity Martinez in the form of Marcelino Moreno, 25-year-old Argentinian designated player. I say replacement for Pity Martinez. He's not exactly a like-for-like replacement. He's more versatile, more box-to-box than pure number 10. So that'll be interesting to see how they implement that. And maybe it's him playing underneath Ezequiel Barco, and Barco sort of goes into that playmaking role permanently with your other attacking players sort of in front of him, but he's the 10, he's the string puller. Could very easily see something like that. But good reports, he's a valuable player. He's going to do more of the little things that sometimes this team lacks. You can always have more guys that do some of the little things that are versatile, that cover every blade of grass on the field. So he's just one of those players that can fit into any team, it sounds like. The other thing I'll point out here, they got him from Lanús in the Argentinian Superliga. This is the same team Miguel Almiron came from. So they're familiar. They're familiar with this club. They've had success making a deal with this team before. They got to hope that he can fit in right away and really start making an impact. If they're going to have any chance of salvaging this season, yeah, they could easily make the playoffs with this expanded format. But that's not good enough for this team. They expect better. They've been really poor this season. And at the very least, you bring him in there, you get him settled, so that next year when Josef Martinez is healthy, if you've got him back to being himself, Moreno and Barco flying on all cylinders, they could be really, really good at the top of the Eastern Conference again. So it's sort of a double bonus where you don't need him to be really good right away because you're probably not winning anything this year. But you also can get him comfortable so that when you are ready next year, he's already in the system, knows what's expected of him. Theoretically, he's playing for a new coach already. We'll see how long it takes them to get a new manager in there, but you've got to think it could happen at any moment. They're not in a rush, but I just kind of find it hard to believe they're going to wait until the end of the season and keep the vacancy for that long. But maybe that happens. Regardless, you got to think they get him in there earlier in the offseason. So this is the next piece in the puzzle. I talked about this before, that the risk you run operating the way Atlanta does is you've got to hit on the next signing every single time. Almiron was a massive success. Martinez did some good things, was a little underwhelming at the end of the day. But they moved very quickly to identify the next guy and the successor to that DP spot. So if you can keep picking the right guys and they keep fitting in well and making an impact, they can absolutely just keep this up and continue to be one of the best teams in this league. So those are all of your transfer developments, transfer news, both in MLS and in Europe that's happened over the past couple days. Wanted to run through them all, give my thoughts. We're going to take our first break. When we come back, for the second time, I'm going to unveil my European Soccer Top 25. I do it every week on the website, so it's always there for you to read at 110sportsmedia.com. But we're gonna talk through at this moment in time who my top 25 teams are. A little background on all of them. I just think this is a fun exercise, and it lets us talk about a lot of teams, so we're going to do that after this break. You're watching Touchline Talk on 110 Sports. And welcome back to Touchline Talk here on 110 Sports. As I said, it's time for another edition of the European Soccer Top 25. Want to jump right into it here. Coming in at the 25th spot at this moment in time. It's a little tricky here because plenty of these teams play today. Europa League and specifically the Carabao Cup in England. So this will change by the time I release my final top 25 for 110sportsmedia.com. They'll come out tomorrow morning. But nevertheless, at this moment in time, as we're doing this show, 25, I've got Everton. I've been talking about the 9 teams in the Premier League, and it's not been exactly a great start for some of the teams in Germany, France, Spain. And Everton has 4 wins in 4, 2 in the Premier League, 2 in the Carabao Cup. I'm not putting much stock in the Carabao Cup performances at all. They were expected to win those games. It's primarily backups and squad rotation. But they're outscoring opponents 14-4 in those games. And to me, this is really about what they've done in the Premier League. I'm not going to jump and say they're a top 4 team. They're going to finish in a... Not even sure they're going to finish in a European spot. I would pick them to finish top 7 right now if I could redo my Premier League predictions. But it's still early. Things could happen. Who knows what it looks like if James gets injured for an extended period of time. So I'm not completely sold, and I wasn't going to let them fly up the rankings, but they've done too much to get ignored and stay unranked when so many teams have struggled, and they've been really, really good. So I'm not exactly sure what their ceiling is, in all honesty, but they deserve the top 25 spot. I wasn't going to leave them out after what they've done so far. 24 is Rennes. They've got 3 straight wins in League 1. Most recently, they got a 2-1 come from behind win over Monaco. Got goals in the 81st and 92nd minute. Talk about timely. And the other thing with this team is they've got 7 goal scorers in their 4 games. They are finding contributions from a lot of different places, which can be dangerous if you don't have a guy who consistently gives you goals. But it's too early to worry about that. They've got a lot of players playing well right now. And it's just getting hard to doubt this team after what they did last year and what they've shown so far this season. To me, they're absolutely a top 4 team in France and could very easily end up 2nd or 3rd in Ligue 1 if Marseille and Lyon continue to drop points the way they have so far. It's early. Again, I don't think their ceiling's very high. They could struggle when they have to throw Champions League into the mix here. But so far, so good for Rennes. They are proving that last year was no fluke, and you gotta give them credit. Hats off to them. 23, Bayer Leverkusen. 0-0 draw with Wolfsburg to start the season. Not the end of the world. It's a good Wolfsburg team. So I wasn't going to take them out of the top 25 or anything. They just didn't do much to fill you with confidence or inspire you at all. Was just kind of a shrug your head, shrug your shoulders performance. Not really sure what to make of it. Don't think there's too much to take away from it. We'll see what they do over the next couple weeks and if they can rebound and put themselves in the position where they're back where they were last year. So I wasn't going to go too far overboard and take them out of the top 25 or anything, but you could say it's a less than ideal start. 22, Arsenal. It was not a great performance against West Ham, but Eddie Nketiah saves them. They got two from 2. Then they go beat Leicester in the Carabao Cup. It was not the greatest game in the world. Arsenal were the better team. We'll talk about Leicester in a minute here, but there's just not much to take away from that. It was primarily backups. I'm much more focused on what we've seen in the Premier League, and it's been pretty good for Arsenal so far. You had a really good performance against Fulham, and then you found a way to steal 3 points, which is sometimes what you have to do. But that performance begs the question again of, can this team consistently perform in the Premier League? Can they do what they did at the end of last season in the FA Cup and beating those high caliber opponents? week in, week out, can they take care of business against Fulham and West Ham, and then find a way to get a point against Chelsea and a win against Manchester United or something? That's what we just don't know the answer to yet. So I can't ignore what they've done. They moved up from last week, but I'm still not sold that this is a legitimate top 4 contender. 21 Tottenham. I still believe in this team. Now you bring in Gareth Bale whenever he's ready to contribute. They got the 5-2 win over Southampton with all of those goals from Son, as we talked about on Tuesday. That made me feel even more confident. They've got their tricky Europa League qualifier against Macedonian side Shikindija. Hopefully I pronounced that somewhat right. Today, on Thursday, it's rough qualifying in the Europa League. But if they can get through that, then it looks a little bit better. They caught a break not having to play the Carabao Cup game on Tuesday, just because it would, their schedule is just brutal right now, with these games coming so quickly on so many different fronts. So we'll see what happens with that, whether it gets rescheduled or whatever. But I'm buying this team. I'm not backing down just because they were bad against Everton. I still think they deserve to be in the top 25. But you also can't ignore that they did have a bad performance and kind of needed some to save them to get, well, at least to get some momentum going in that last game. But then you saw what they can do when they're at their best, and they've got some nice additions coming too. So I still like them better than Arsenal, but that gap is closing because of what Arsenal's done so far. Then we jump into the top 20. At 20, I've got Napoli. They got goals from Dries Mertens and Lorenzo Insigne in a 2-0 win over Parma to start their Serie A campaign. It's a game they should win. They took care of business. Not too much to add in that regard. We'll see what they look like by the end of the transfer window with some potential departures. But they were really disappointing last year. I keep harping on that. This is a good way to start. I still believe in the potential of this team and the players they have if they can keep this group together. So I'm operating in a world where they're better than what they showed last season, and so far so good. 1 game in, picked up 3 points. That's all you can do so far. 19, I've got Wolves. I'm just not worried about the loss against Manchester City, even though it was at home. Nobody is beating that team 3, 4, 5 times in a row. Wolves have had their number. City got them this time. It happened. They were really good in the second half. As I talked about, I like the Nelson Semedo signing and what it can do from them from a tactical standpoint, and how Nuno can rearrange some things because of his ability and the position that he plays. They are focused exclusively on the Premier League, and eventually they'll also be able to put all of their eggs into the FA Cup basket too, just because there's not much else going on for them. So I'm not backing down from my belief in them either. They took a loss, but it was a loss to a top 3 team in the world. It happens. Still think they're going to be really good this year. 18, Mönchengladbach. There's never shame in losing at Signal Iduna Park, especially to this Dortmund team that showed up. But it was a poor performance, disappointing. Doesn't mean all that much at the end of the day, because that's a game you're supposed to lose. It just wasn't inspiring. You didn't see a lot of positives to take away from it. But it's one game. It was their opener. We got to see them play more before we start really determining if they're as good as they were last year or not. 17, Sevilla. They've got the Super Cup against Bayern, which I will not put much stock in at all, because at the end of the day, it's a friendly competition, and nobody wants to spend their starters on that kind of game in the middle of the season. It's more valuable when you can get them some minutes right at the end of your preseason. But that's obviously not the case this year because of all the weird things happening with COVID and the way the schedule had to get rearranged. So we're waiting to see what they do in La Liga. They got their extended break because of their Europa League exploits. So they're just kind of sitting there, passing some teams that have lost or not looked good so far. But too early to make any determinations because they haven't even taken the field yet. 16, I've got Leicester. Like I said, I'm just pretty much choosing to ignore the the Carabao Cup loss to Arsenal. They made 11 changes from their Premier League lineup over the weekend. James Maddison was only out there to get him more minutes as he gets closer to being back to full fitness and to get us 70 minutes under his belt as opposed to 20. Other than that, it was just the other guys that Brendan Rodgers had available. I'm much more concerned about the fact that they're 2 for 2 in the Premier League and have looked good. I think they're going to be pretty much as good as they were last year. It's not going to look the same in terms of the table, but I've got a lot of faith in this team. That faith dwindled a little bit when you hear that Wilfred Ndidi is out 6 to 12 weeks, though. We haven't seen him play without him, so it's not reflected in the rankings yet. But that could cause some trouble. If you're looking at Maddison maybe not being able to start every game, Ricardo's still hurt, then you lose Ndidi. Mendy's been good filling in as that center defensive midfielder when Ndidi was playing center back. But Ndidi's as good as anybody in the league at what he does and being that force in midfield. So that's a big blow. That's the kind of thing that could bump them down a peg in the Premier League with all of these teams so close together 1 through 9. So that's definitely something to keep an eye on, is how they cope with not having him available for an extended period of time. 15, I've got Lazio. They were really good last year. They were the team that posed the most threat to Juventus most of the season. Fell apart at the end. I'm choosing to believe they're sort of somewhere in between the team that almost won Serie A and that being a fluke. They haven't played yet. We're still waiting to see what they can do. There's just it's hard to do this right now because there's some of these teams we just can't put any stock in anything because we haven't seen them yet. So that's really all there is to say about Lazio right now. They were passed this week by RB Leipzig, who I've got 14th, because Leipzig looked good and we have data on them now. That's basically the reason. They got a dominant 3-1 win over Mainz. They had a 10-1 advantage in shots on goal. Emil Forsberg had a penalty that he converted and got an assist. He's kind of been glossed over these past couple of years, but when Leipzig first took the Bundesliga by storm, he was a big reason why. And he just hasn't been the same player these past couple of years, as I said, but with Timo Werner leaving and some players needing to step up, he's a guy I look at that could really make a difference for them and have a phenomenal season. So he is absolutely somebody to keep on your radar as one of the more sort of unsung heroes of these teams that are going to do well and might be able to compete with your Bayerns and Dortmunds of the world. He's definitely somebody to watch. It's one game. Again, don't want to put too much stock into it, read into it too much, but I definitely thought that was worth noting. He can do some really good things. You've seen what he's able to do in the Bundesliga. He's just not been at his best recently. 13, Atalanta. Not much to report here. Again, haven't played yet because of their Champions League run. I really like what this team is doing. I've said that before. I'm not moving them down much at all until they don't perform well. Nothing that an Arsenal or a Leipzig or somebody can do in a couple of games is going to convince me that they're going to pass this point. This is sort of my separation, my divider, if you will. That you got to do something special to get into this top 13 past Atalanta until all of these teams are playing on a regular basis. 12, Atletico Madrid, same thing. I've had him here since the beginning. You bring Suarez in, I like the move. Diego Simeone tested positive for COVID, so they had a strange coaching situation. But he's expected back for their Serie A opener. Sorry, their La Liga opener. I'm really high on what this team can do this year. I think they could really challenge for Champions League, for La Liga potentially. I think they're going to be closer than they have been in the past couple years. But again, we have no data, so they're sitting there. At 12th, 11, Barcelona. Just like I've had them from the beginning. I can't put them any higher until they play. Even with some of the struggles that we've already seen from these teams in the top 10, I still think they are all better than Barcelona until Barcelona actually proves that they're ready to compete with Real Madrid under Ronald Koeman with this group. And we'll see what they look like by the end of the transfer window, but I'm skeptical. They've got Messi, which means they're not going to be anything lower than 15th at the absolute worst, unless it gets really bad, but I like these top 10 a lot more than I like Barcelona until Barcelona does something to change my mind. Moving into our top 10, Manchester United. That was just a really poor performance against Crystal Palace. Congrats to Donny van de Beek on his goal, but that was the team that struggled at the beginning of last year, not the team that was flying by the end of the season. They took care of Luton Town in the Carabao Cup. Nice confidence booster against a team that was playing really well, as I mentioned on Tuesday, but it's a game United's supposed to win, especially with their squad depth. So you've got Juan Mata making contributions, and then your big players come on at the end and close the deal. We've just got to wait and see with this team. I was sold, but that loss to Palace was rather jarring for me. Again, I'm not changing much because of one game, but that was definitely a red flag that made my antennae perk up, if you will. That I want to see what they look like over the next month or so, because we could easily get into a situation where they're not anywhere near as good as we thought they were. But they could also turn this thing around very, very quickly. So I'm not backing them out of the top 10, but they're not getting any higher than 10th this week. 9, Borussia Dortmund. Jude Bellingham, Gio Reyna were great. They're really good. And they had one of the better performances of these teams up at the top. I'm not going to move them any higher than 9th based on one game at home. But, boy, they are fun to watch. We got to see if they can do this consistently. What happens when they play Bayern, but they looked great. They're phenomenal. They're one of those teams that's just really easy to root for. I expect them to stay in the top 10 pretty much all season, in all honesty. 8, Juventus. There's just not much to take away from a win over Sampdoria, but positives and thumbs up all around. They looked good. Got off to a good start with 3 points. Ronaldo's on the score sheet. You got some nice contributions from some of your new signings. You bring in Morata. You get some of those other players healthy that weren't available. You got to feel good if you're Pirlo, but I'm not moving much because they beat a team they should beat. 7, Inter Milan. I'm not backing down on my belief that Inter Milan is slightly better than Juventus and will edge them out to win Serie A just because Juventus won their first game. Arturo Vidal signing, just another depth piece for Antonio Conte. That squad is absolutely loaded. We just got to wait and see when they actually start playing, which will happen soon, and then that'll be really nice that the next time we do this, we'll have real games to evaluate from all of these teams. 6, I kept Chelsea there. I'm not worried about what happened against Liverpool. Timo Werner looks the part already, even though he hasn't found the back of the net. They're not even close to full strength. Again, we've got to see what Frank Lampard can do when all of his pieces are at his disposal, and they're just not right now. Soon that should happen in the next month or so. I think we've got everybody ready to go, and they'll get some games together. Kai Havertz scored a hat trick in a Carabao Cup thumping. Again, not much to read into there. They beat a team they should beat. But good to see him get on the score sheet and start getting comfortable. That's really all I have there. Is nobody really made a statement except for Dortmund, and I still like what Chelsea have at the end of the day when they get all of their players ready for selection. You can put the best 11 they've got on the field. Into our top five. 5 is PSG. I dropped them down quite a bit after the debacle that was the start to their season, but they're back on track. They're already back within striking distance of the top of the league on table, and it's not exactly teams that scare you up there right now. All of their guys have pretty much now played. Mbappe came back and scored in their last game. Angel Di Maria got himself suspended 4 games for his role in the spitting confrontation mess against Marseille. So they're going to be without him. They're still dealing with the Neymar suspension. So they have not been able to get all of their guys on the field, but it just doesn't matter when they're playing in this league. You have 1 or 2 of your big names, you're going to be fine. So they're back on track. I'm not worried about them. But I also wasn't going to put them ahead of these 4 teams just because they won a couple games they should have after losing games that they shouldn't have. They got to show a little bit more until I think that they're back to where they were at the end of last season and one of the favorites to win the Champions League. So I kept Real Madrid at 4. Not in love with it by any means, but nobody did enough to take their spot. They were not inspiring, but in the end, it's 1 game, it's a point. We'll see what they can do moving forward. 3-2-1 are the same. Manchester City 3, Liverpool 2, Bayern 1. City's still not even at full strength. You still don't have Laporte. You still don't have Gundogan, Mahrez, Aguero, which is an underappreciated aspect of this team sometimes. That you look at the 11 in the field and you go, oh, they're phenomenal. And then you bring in a Ferran Torres off the bench, this young guy with all this potential, and forget that they've got 4 guys who would probably be starting not available for him right now. They've got remarkable depth. That's nothing new. Very, very impressed with what we saw from Liverpool against Chelsea. They caught a break to actually take control of the game, but they looked lively. Their attack was engaged. So they absolutely solidified themselves as 2. They start their Carabao Cup adventure this afternoon as well. And 1, Bayern destroyed Schalke. There's not much to it. Whether they win or lose against Sevilla in the Super Cup is fairly irrelevant to me. They're going to be number 1 until something happens that really makes me question something. They got to lose a Bundesliga game or they need to have a couple draws and Liverpool continues to win or something for this to move. They're just too good right now. They're in too good form. They're too consistent over too long of a period for me to put anybody else number 1. So, there we go. There's our top 25. Take a quick break when we come back. A fairly fast look at what's next, focusing specifically on this weekend and some of the bigger games from around Europe and 1 MLS game as well. So, we'll be right back. You're watching Touchline Talk on 110 Sports. And welcome back once again to Touchline Talk. We're going to get right into what's next here rather quickly today. We're jumping right to Saturday. As I mentioned, there are a lot of games going on today, but none of them are of particularly significant magnitude. They're just a lot of games that are happening for the most part. So we're going to focus what's happening this weekend. We've got some bigger games with more significance. Everton Crystal Palace. They're two of the 5 teams that have 6 points through 2 games in the Premier League, but a lot of these teams are playing each other this weekend. This is going to be a statement week for the Premier League, as we're going to talk about some of these other games coming up here, because you've got one on Sunday and one on Monday. But if somebody can take 3 points from this game and be sitting there with 9, there aren't going to be a lot of teams that can say that, because of all these teams that are playing each other that are still have an opportunity to be perfect. So you've got some big matchups. If Everton can win this one, they're on their way to putting themselves in position for at the very least, a Europa League spot. Again, it's early. They still got plenty of work to do. But if they can win this one, they can't ask for much more. Real Betis, Real Madrid. Can Real Madrid sort of rebound from a rough debut, get 3 points, get going, as some of these other bigger teams in Spain start playing this weekend? Your game in France, Saint Etienne and Stade Rennes. Talked about Rennes, so they lost their goalkeeper, Edouard Mendy. But these are your 2 teams up at the top of the league on table right now with 3 wins and a draw in their first 4 games. We talked about all the contributions Rennes getting. Saint Etienne's doing with defense. They got 3 clean sheets in those 4 games. So somebody's going to take control of this league early on, and of course just be hoping to stay up there and keep as much distance between themselves and PSG as possible. But if not, at the very least, this is starting for positioning for your other Champions League spots and seeing who can position themselves as the teams right there with PSG, or the teams that finish behind PSG. So, big one there. Also, Inter Milan, Fiorentina. Inter gets going. Fiorentina got a 1-0 win over Torino. So, they're in pretty good form. And, again, we haven't seen Inter yet. But, good chance to start off on the right note. We're going to see what they look like as they begin this campaign Sunday, September 27th. This is another one of those Premier League games I was talking about. Manchester City, Leicester City. Again, you've got 2 teams that haven't lost yet. Now, City's only played once. But somebody's going to put themselves in good position early. Somebody's going to be fine, but it's a statement, especially if Leicester can win this one. Then again, you're looking at 9 points from 3 games and feeling really, really good about where you're at. Roma, Juventus. This is our first high-profile Serie A matchup. A good test for Juventus to see what they're made of, what they look like at this moment in time. Roma, a chance to make an early statement and get themselves back into the top 4 conversation, and it's going to be a tough battle in Serie A, so good opportunity for them there. Barcelona starts against Villarreal. Not much to say other than Barcelona is starting their La Liga season. And in MLS, we've got Toronto Columbus. Columbus continues to win games, is better than everybody else in this league. Toronto has an opportunity to position themselves as the 2 seed. This could be a really nice boost for them. There's a lot of teams jumbled there right now, Orlando, Philly, and Toronto, specifically because of the results we saw last night. So, they're absolutely capable of winning this game. It's another good test for Columbus to see if they can keep this going, because they've played some of the tougher teams in their conference and have survived so far. So if they win this one, they're well on their way to a supporters shield. And then we have Monday. Just 2 games, but they're big ones in the Premier League. This is another one of those high-profile, high-stakes matchups. Liverpool-Arsenal. Again, can Arsenal get 9 from 3? Can Liverpool keep doing what they're doing and put some pressure on Manchester City early. And Fulham versus Aston Villa. Can Fulham turn things around? Can Villa get off to a really good start this season? You saw some good stuff for them in their first game. They got an opportunity to win another one here. That's all we have for you on Touchline Talk today. Thank you so much for listening. As always, pay attention to everything going on 110sportsmedia.com. Chris Brown will be coming up at 1 p.m. with Around the Bases. Josh Mullen will be back with his show tomorrow. But that is it for Touchline Talk today. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you Tuesday.